Hello, everyone, and welcome to our podcast. I'm Dani, and today, Great.com talks with Melissa Millward, President of Trails Youth Initiatives. If you haven't heard of them yet, they are a Canadian organization focused on challenging and equipping youth through outdoor education. Before we begin, remember, if you're new here to this podcast, press subscribe on YouTube or in your podcast app. Hi, Melissa, and welcome.
Hi, Dani. Thanks for having me today.
It's my pleasure. I'm really looking forward to know more about you guys. So let's begin by learning more about Trail's history, right? When did it all begin and what motivated its creation?
Well, Trails was founded in 1992, and our mission has remained the same to challenge and equip vulnerable youth from at risk areas to become contributing members of the community. And we do that through a 4-year outdoor education program. We like to say we're 4 seasons, 4 years, for life. And it's a really unique model. And I think that is based in our genesis, which was our founder, Jim Hayhurst, or nicknamed Hurst, had written this book called The Right Mountain about finding your innate gifts and climbing or not climbing Mount Everest in this case. And he was a legendary ad man who traveled the world as a motivational speaker. And he also was the chairman of Outward Bound Canada, which focuses on outdoor education and the role that that can play in supporting emotional, behavioral, and intellectual development in youth. And he really was piecing together all of these elements and seeing that if you wanted to make true systemic change in the lives of vulnerable youth, you needed to do it in a consistent, long-term way. And he watched the impact of taking youth from very dire situations and immersing them into an external landscape of nature and giving them activities like learning to canoe or swim or fishing was really our genesis, handing a boy a fishing rod and watching how that really changed his behavior from going, in this case, almost catatonic shock from some of the traumas he had watched, to building some self-esteem, establishing a sense of community when he caught a fish and sharing that with his peers. And Hurst was really perplexed by this question of how could a fishing rod change somebody's life, as this micro symbol of what is it that this activity is teaching or showing to this individual, and the impact has such a huge magnitude and a ripple effect. So we've had over 600 graduates come through the program now and are giving back to the community. In fact, we know that for every $1 invested, it's returning over $18 back to the community.
Wow, I'm really impacted by this, and it's actually quite humbling if you think about this question that you shared, like how a fishing rod can actually improve a person's life. It's really, really something to think about. And considering now, I mean, it's been a quite long road, right? Ever since back then. What are the most pressing issues that you see youth facing in Canada right now?
Oh, well, especially post-pandemic, the implications on physical and mental well-being and health have dramatically decreased. Our youth in particular, we're recruiting our youth when they're 12 years old, which is a very vulnerable age in general, when you're meeting puberty and you're shifting into different schools or learning areas. So we recruit from 6 different schools in Toronto, and those schools are rated in the lowest 15% on what's called the Learning Opportunity Index done by the school board. And we know from educational research that children from lower income families face more barriers in achieving high school education, food access, resources in general. So overall, especially in the physicality of what we're doing at times, we're seeing a huge drop in mobile application and abilities to, say, go on a canoe trip that we used to be able to do in 5 days. It would now take us 7 days. So there's a physical shift, I think, in the increase in sedentary lifestyle. But bigger than that is we're seeing a huge change in challenges with mental health. So increase in suicide assessments, behavioral interventions that we put out. Now, the really beautiful part is that each of our kids are so unique, and we like to pick kind of the diamonds in the rough, those that aren't getting all the attention at school for performing academically well, or those maybe getting attention for strong behavior issues, but those right in the middle that tend to slip through the cracks. And those kids, when you give them the opportunity, they thrive. And although kids from our zones are 3 times more likely to drop out of high school, again, those issues of race, income, single parent families, first generation families or immigrant families, compared to their peer group, 99% of our kids are finishing high school. So I'm so proud of them for their resilience and grit to make that happen. And when they're also at our trails site, which looks like a camp where they're doing outdoor activities like learning to swim and canoe, and in the winter we ski and we snowshoe and we ice skate. Those activities are really just acting as the vessel for us to teach life's deeper lessons in conflict resolution, community, leadership, building up self-esteem, telling them you can do and achieve anything that you set your mind to. But when they finished high school and they got their diploma, then the kids started to say, well, this is amazing. I've been part of this community that was 4 seasons, 4 years. So the same group of peers, 20 of them, living in the same cabin, learning to go on canoe trips in Northern Ontario with just a pack on their back. And they were doing that 1 weekend a month, 2 weeks in the summer for 4 years. So a long-term preventative and consistent program. We know it works. When they graduated from us, they enter into a mentorship program with older alumni to help guide them through the next set of years. And they looked at attending post-secondary education. We know is a huge indicator, again, in someone's success and ability to give back to their community. And as soon as you go to apply for school, you need a credit card and you have to make a deposit. And there's another huge barrier. So what we're trying to do is remove these barriers that exist, that are plentiful, and say, okay, here's our credit card. Here's money for school. So 72% of our kids are going on to post-secondary school. And in fact, we pay for the whole thing. Right now, we have 40 students who are going to post-secondary. We had 10 graduate, 2 with doctorates. So I'm just beyond proud of what our kids are achieving. And it's a variety of success. So some success looks like a doctorate. Some success is being a caregiver for someone at home, or a child, or a mother. Some is working at a grocery store, or as a social worker, as a pilot. There's a huge range of people. But what we ask them is, do you feel you're contributing and giving back? What is your life satisfaction? And they really attribute their time at Trails to being such a proponent of their ability to thrive. And they want to pay it forward and give back. And I think that's the true secret to changing the world and addressing the issues that young people face, is that they're the true leaders of tomorrow.
I have so many questions for you in this interview, but I need to make a comment because I can almost touch your pride on this, on the kids and the work that you do. It's actually quite moving. And I often say this, that sometimes we ask about metrics, we ask about how are you able to measure your success rate, the impact that you create. And in my personal opinion, I think whenever you see someone like returning and beginning the cycle again in a different position and willing to give back to those that gave to them, or to other kids in need, and really find their place in this whole give and take of life, that's where you measure your success, right? So it's really moving to see you speak like this, and to see the impact of consistency, of hard work and insisting and persisting in someone. I think sometimes we need that. We just don't know how to ask for it, right? So it's really, really moving.
No, definitely. And I think that when we started, we knew the basis and the basic principles of how can you really shape someone's life and make it deeply impactful. And we know anecdotally from all the testimonials of the kids, or now adults who are in their 40s, or our oldest alumni, of what they say. If it wasn't for trails, I would either be in jail or dead. Before I started trails, I was quiet, introverted. After trails, I'm able to speak in public and I'm able to make friends. Or before trails, I had a really hard time managing my temper. After trails, I can take a deep breath and I can realize that the other person's intentions may be very different than what I'm perceiving them as. But measuring impact is such a tricky dilemma for every organization, in particular charities, because we have this strong heart pull for stories and people. And I do believe it needs to stay in that way because people are the whole reason. People are the purpose. But some donors in particular require more stats and analytics. And I think there's a general movement of how we're improving that measurement system and a shift in the stigma that charities receive around one of a typical question might be, review your financials with me and what's your overhead? And now when I'm asked what's your overhead, my response is, can you ask me what my impact is first? Even though we manage our overhead and our admin, it's a really difficult question to say that a staff member counts as overhead when they're really such a meaningful tool and mentor in these young people's lives. And so to that point, our staff team, we have about 40 facilitators that work part-time with the youth and 15 full-time. And almost half of those people are alumni. So they've chosen to come back and give in this way. And there's also alumni who run independent fundraising campaigns for us, where they go out and they try to collect donations to support our mission. And we have to fundraise just over $2 million each year. And we do it without any government support. So it's all privately donated. And that was an important part in our genesis as well. We wanted to have it led by our people and achieve independently in this way. So through events, through corporations, through individuals. And we've got a really beautiful donor base of people who believe in what we're doing and believe in the kids.
Wow. Thank you. Thank you so much for sharing it. I think it's vital to hear it from someone inside and see these perspectives. Well, now let me get back on track and ask about your programs because, well, you mentioned the Four Seasons for Years. I really want to know more about this. It's Four Seasons for Years for Life program. How is it structured? How does it work?
Right. So the youth are recruited when they're 12, and then they come up 1 weekend a month throughout the year, and they do this summer expedition journey together. And the program focuses on fostering community and emotional intelligence, along with self-knowledge through outdoor experiential education. So we may be doing a high ropes climbing activity. You get a harness on, a rope, and we're climbing this high ropes element called a dangle-a-maze, for example. You need 4 people to climb it at once. It goes up to 60 feet in the air. So already we're creating adversity, challenge, perceived risk. And that can really stir up and trigger some fears in people. Everything we do is challenge by choice. So you set your own goal. So my goal might be, I'm getting to the very top. And yours might be, I'm going to try to do the first step on, or I'm just going to try to put my harness on today. But so we set those goals and we work together. And that high ropes element, for example, you have to work together as a team in order to get to the top. So I couldn't just race up. We need to use each other's knees or feet and grab each other's hands to help one another to actually climb. So when we do the activity, we have a really high staff to participant ratio as well, about 1-3, which means that if I'm having a hard time with doing the actual activity, I'm able to step away and take space from the group with one of the counselors and have a conversation, which could just be surface level. It might go deep into what's going on for me at home, or why is this activity triggering me in some way. But we have the opportunity of that longevity of getting to know the kids over many years. So we get to know them in a really in-depth way. And then the trust and rapport goes up. And really that whole first year is about building trust. We wouldn't do that high ropes element right away. because the 12-year-olds are just figuring out, how do I share a cabin with 10 other people? How do I deal with these mosquitoes and bugs that are bothering me? It's their first time often in nature when they're used to the city, the concrete jungle. I've had kids sitting around a campfire, enchanted, staring up at the sky and asking, oh, are those stars? And it takes my breath away to think about it, the opportunity to give someone the chance to see that beauty and sit in it and have such a different exposure in life. And I think that's what can be so meaningful. Then there's also an innovative curriculum that emphasizes growing and strengthening life skills. We do focus a lot on nonviolent communication and conflict resolution. I think it's the secret to solving many of our world's problems is understanding one another and building empathy. And we focus on a few different pedagogies of education, but one being around choice theory and what am I responsible for in life, and how can I have empathy for others, set my own boundaries, be held accountable to them and the consequences of certain actions, but how can I do it in a safe and positive environment?
And I want to be part of trails. Can I? Do you take do you take grown-ups from other countries? I definitely no, I'm sorry, but again, it's the way that you tell this. It sounds quite innovative. It sounds, again, a construction. It sounds something that you build in these kids' lives. That's not about just sporadic encounters and let me get to know you on the surface. It's really about being there for them on the long run. And it's amazing that you guys are able to do that. And then moving to the other program that I want to know, because people are coming back, right? It's the For Life program. How does that one work?
So For Life is that we're going to be with you forever. And that includes the Alumni Association, which is the community of other peers and alumni where we have an annual event and volunteer engagements and communications. There's also an emergency support fund for anyone in crisis. So that might be with housing or groceries or therapy. Then this alumni and mentorship. So that's where we're pairing a Trails alumni with a younger alumni. And the purpose of that is to support the goal of high school graduation and that transition from leaving Trails and the cadence of Trails and that structure and safety to transferring that to everyday life. We talk about our triangle to success, which is our core values. And the top is everything needs to be physically and emotionally safe. The second is fun. It's not fun, we're not going to do it. And fun is amazing because it loosens your inhibitions. It allows learning to come in. And the third is this concept of roots and wings. So we're establishing our roots, building our trust, building community. But then eventually you have to spread your wings and go out into the world. And it's really supporting that wings component of how do we transition beyond being a participant to now being an alumni and a community member. I did mention the bursary program, and that's given over $2 million to students, over 350 alumni tuition expenses, and mentorship has taken place. And the other is this resource program with career connections and internships with partner corporations that we work with. So having seminars on life skills and financial literacy. But one of the unique pieces is this mentorship with someone with for example, a corporate partner, where you might get an internship to work at their business, but you're also having a friend. So it might mean me messaging you in the future, Danny, if one of our alumni says, I'm really interested in podcasts. And I go, oh, let me see if Danny would have a Zoom coffee with you. And then it just gives them an opportunity to talk to someone in the industry that they're interested in, when often they are having a very isolated or secular network. So they wouldn't have somebody that they could access in finances or, investment finance, whatever the works. So it's just creating an opportunity to get their foot in the door and start to shift them from being pre-screened from interviews or on resumes just based on their name. So how do we break down this wall of stigma against diverse populations?
Melissa, with all of this, I gotta say, I want to get in touch, and please, if anyone is interested in podcasts, do refer me. I'll be completely available and happy to talk. But
Wonderful.
I gotta ask for if anyone, I think probably most people will be touched by this and really want to get involved in a way. What are the best ways to support you and help you keep going?
Well, I do hope some folks are interested in learning more. So trails.ca is our website and our handle online, and you can stay up to date on what's going on for us. I think as a base, knowing for our participants that people believe in them and are educating themselves on different approaches to youth education programs, that's really helpful. If folks would like to learn more, there's tons of information available. And of course, donating any financial support goes a long, long way for us. It is an expensive program. And we knew that from day one. And it's the reason that it works. Because if you can create a structure that is so wraparound and holistic, that's when you can really have a big impact on a few rather than a little on many. And we're always looking for volunteers. We have about 500 volunteers, and that can range from helping us rake leaves in the autumn to painting cabins in the spring, and then all the way to these business meetings or career connections.
Amazing, amazing. And guys, you can find the link to their page in the description of this episode. Melissa, thank you so much for chatting with us today. I really loved it.
Thank you. Me as well.
And for everybody listening also, thank you so much. And remember, if you enjoyed the episode, press subscribe on YouTube or on your podcast app, because that shows the algorithms that this is an important conversation and more people can learn about the importance of the Trails Youth Initiatives. Bye, get in touch with them, and I see you in the next episode.